It's another Sunday. The Shaker Heights, where experiences may vary. We're broadcasting live today from Southington, the Southington Rapid Stop, where we caught up with Paul Bounds. This man is a man of the people, an avid artist and comic book collector, amongst other things. Councilman and the Deputy Director for Cuyahoga County of Jobs and Family Services. So let's bring Class of 85s all the way lives to the stage right now. Mr. Paul Bounds.
Hey, Paul.
There we go.
Hey guys, how are you? Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for taking time out. Councilman Bounds. So
yes, constituent. Yes, how can I help you?
Yes. So you wear both hats, right? Because you're the Deputy Director for Cuyahoga County, and then you're a councilman for Bedford Heights, Ohio,
Yes,
right?
yes, Bedford Heights. Yeah, it's an interesting balance. So my job position, is not an appointed position. I was technically hired. So appointed positions in the state of Ohio, where there are a general phrase called home rule, which dictates the ability for people who are appointed to hold multiple positions. And so, I've been with the county for about 8 years, something like that. I can't remember exactly. And I did have to get authorization approval from our Inspector General's office to ensure, because there's some complexities in Ohio law regarding the ability to have legislative authority over governmental institutions you have contracts with, or you do business with, or things like that. So there are very small specific situations as a council person which could arise, which I have to recuse myself from. But generally, most of the jobs I do don't really interact. A lot of information I have available through my county job, I do make available to the residents here in Bedford Heights. Like case example, we had this great storm that rolled through Ohio recently. We had a huge power outage. There's a very good percentage of people who live in Bedford Heights who receive food assistance or SNAP. And, my department processes a replacement benefit. So individuals who lost their power for 4 hours or more, able to get a replacement benefit. So I'll make sure that our residents, through my different social media feeds and contact with City Hall, we make sure we share that information out and worked hard to get a waiver through federal food assistance with the support of Senator Sherrod Brown's office to get a waiver to automatically update individuals' SNAP cards. So any resident in Bedford Heights who lost power, who needed food replacement, to submit an application through our legislative approval and work with the county, we're able to make sure those residents are getting that food assistance they needed.
Right on, man of the people. So we're going to bring it back. Let's bring it back to the days of Ludlow. So when did your family arrive to Shaker, or are you like Shaker generational?
No, we moved in when I was a pretty young guy. So Gabe, obviously, but I have an older sister and a younger brother. So when I was born, we were living in the East Side projects in the East Side of Cleveland. And my father at the time was in the Navy. And when he got out, I was really young, maybe 2, maybe 1. We moved into Ludlow neighborhood when he got out of the Navy. So we moved into Ashwood, and my mother kept the house in Ashwood until, maybe 20 years ago, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I graduated, my sister graduated, my brother graduated, we all moved out of the house, and she eventually sold the house to get out of there. But I still remember and did 3165 Ashwood Road. I still remember that. So.
Wow. Yeah. Now, were you across the street from Keith Asamoto or on the same side?
No, Keith was further down. So Southington dissected Ashwood.
Right.
Keith was on the other side, going closer to Shaker Square.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there were like 1 or 2 other kids who went to the schools who stayed on our street. So, Shaker has that whole dividing line where technically there's a city of Cleveland cut off, but you're allowed to go to Shaker schools.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just literally across the street, there were folks who were going to John Hay who weren't going to Shaker School. So.
Oh wow.
Yeah. 3165 makes me think of Fuller's address, which was 3162 Beckett.
Yeah. And as a young kid, we, Miss Fuller, she watched us. So a lot of time in that house. Watching those Fuller boys, like, oh, this is so cool. This is the best place to be,
Yeah.
Growing up and living the life, man. It was a good time.
Yeah, man. So yeah, all right. So obviously Ludlow, junior high, Woodbury. So talk about some of the, some of your besties, your friends or classmates that came up with you that you're still, in touch with these days.
Yeah, I in touch with is kind of like a loose space thing. A lot of it's
Yeah.
social media driven. We sort of keep in touch, but a lot of folks that I really were, it was different periods of time. So my Ludlow crowd wasn't always my Woodbury crowd and wasn't always my Sugar Heights crowd. But one of the buddies I hung out with a lot at Woodbury, and unfortunately he passed, was Billy Lyons. So he was
Wow.
on Ludlow, I believe it was. And we were pretty tight and kind of drifted away as we got into high school and junior high school. And so happened at the time I was working for the state of Ohio, and I relocated to Columbus, and Billy lived in Columbus. We were able to reconnect to kind of keep
Yeah.
in touch. So, but yeah, Billy was one of my buddies in Ludlow, and obviously a lot of the other folks. Brian Poe was another guy. Keith
Yeah.
Little
Yeah.
also love me some also. Like I said, Brian Poe and Alden Morris was another guy we kind of hung.
Yeah. Naughty. Shout out to
Yeah,
Naughty.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. The late Victor Chaplin, another good guy who. So these all of us we kind of ran together pretty tight in Ludlow. Man, we did all the things together, crossing guard, all the activities, and we were. I think it was my fifth grade year, or maybe it's fourth grade year at Ludlow when they introduced the Advanced Learners Program, and
Okay.
they bust in kids from some of the other schools, and so we got to meet some other people who had never, these new kids coming in, great ones
Yeah.
like. Kelly Richardson, these people who were just going on to do really wonderful stuff and kind of a chance to meet other people from different neighborhoods. So that was kind of interesting. Moving into Woodbury, the one buddy I kind of attached to and kind of hung on pretty tight for a long time was Jeff Watkins. And, Jeff and I were pretty pretty tight and fast for a number of years, getting up into high school. And so he was like my main buddy. Every now and then we'll touch up and, through Facebook. He lives in Columbus. When I was coaching football for a couple of different options, was with Shaker, and I coached with the local women's team at the time, the Cleveland Fusion. We had a few games in Columbus. And
Oh, wow. Okay.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, well, I can tell you stories about Cleveland Fusion, man.
I didn't know there was a team.
Yeah. It's no longer there. It was disbanded, but for a number of years, Cleveland Fusion. We used to play our home games at Bedford High School and Maple Heights, and even on Byers Field for a period of time. So we can dig into that if you're curious about when this.
Oh yeah, were you a founder of that, or was that around before you got in?
It was. So a fellow I worked with was friends with the owner. So the story goes like this: the original owner, Kelly Tell, tried out. So the NFL, at that time, it's called the National Women's Football Association. They were looking to host a team in Cleveland. They held tryouts.
And what time was this? Was this in
This was early 2000s. It had to be around 2004, 2005, Eric, somewhere around that time.
Okay.
So Kelly Tell tried out for the team, didn't make the cuts, but inquired about getting a franchise, and so she became the first owner. And her first year, they did really, really well. But my buddy Eric Ball, good dude, reached out to me because he knew I had a lot of coaching experience. At that time, I coached at Shaker Heights.
Is this the Eric Ball, the football player who played for Cincinnati and UCLA? No,
actually,
no.
It's not. He gets confused all the time. And he goes
Okay.
Those kind of guy. So she needed some help organizationally. She knew nothing about football, and like I said, with my coaching experience with Shaker and Beechwood and Case Western Reserve, I came out and spoke with her, and I came on in the second year of the team as the director of operations. So I helped coordinate the all the behind the scenes things, making sure we got equipment, upgraded equipment, scheduling of the games, scrimmages, recruiting coaches, training coaches, and that kind of thing.
Wow.
The second year, third year, we changed coaches, and the third game into the year, the head coach quit. So I stepped in, finished the season out. I came back the second year out of continuity. We kind of went 5-3 the second year, and the third year came back and said, we're make or break year. We ended up going 7-1, set all kinds of league records, just an amazing season. And we lost in the semifinal game in Oklahoma City, and we kind of got robbed and homered. But so so Kelly sold the team after that, and so another owner came on, and it's passed the hands a couple of times. And I think 4 years ago, the current owner was looking to sell, and there were no potential buyers. When COVID had really had an effect on the league, and so from that point on, it's just been there's going around a ton of leagues around. Ohio has 3 or 4 teams there's two in Columbus and one in Cincinnati right now. So
Oh, wow. How big is the league? Do you know how many teams? I'll have to research this.
it's changed names. It's no longer the National Women's Football Association. I think it's called the Women's Football Association, I think, something like that.
Okay.
There are 3 divisions. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah, and each division has East Coast, West Coast, Mid Ohio representation. So it's like an advanced tier 1, secondary tier 2, and lower team, like newer teams, newer franchises are like a tier 3. So yeah, it's out there. I think I know ESPN2 showed a couple of their playoff games last year.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's getting pushed out there. There's I tell you, in terms of when I coached, I would argue that the players had the football skill set of like middle school, junior high school kids, but they were sort of amazing athletes. And as one of the players, a Mary teacher, who I think right now is the head football coach or at least she's on the football staff at Beechwood High School. So we had amazing athletes. I mean, women who could run you out the door, who could tackle, just boom. It was just teaching them the football skill sets, and so it was a blast. I enjoyed my years with them. I came back a couple of times to sort of help out as needed, but yeah, I enjoyed it, man. It really made some good friendships and really kind of learned a lot more about coaching. So it was a big blast for me.
Did they? No, this was like full contact, full pads, and everything. Wow.
Yeah, full quarters, full tackle, referees, kept score. Yeah, man, and we do it all. We were great to film. We would film the games. Have a practice plan, ran a legit offense or defense, So yeah, it was interesting. And a lot of these people, it was their first introduction to tackle football for some of these women. Had no idea. And, so my expectation rose that, hey, I needed to create an environment where women can be coached, to be, learned and taught. So I ended up building a pretty good staff. I had a couple of guys who were former NFL players, a lot of guys who had coached and played at the college level. Yeah. So it really well-rounded staff that understood what was needed and what was expected. So it was, it was always difficult keeping guys to kind of help out with women's football because sometimes they didn't take it serious. But, the folks we brought on were pretty considerate and they were pretty focused, and, the players appreciated that. So, yeah, I enjoyed my time.
That would be an interesting, like, Friday Night Lights type of series around a women's football team.
Yeah. I mean, it's a whole different dynamic, with when I, coached high school kids. Yeah. These are young kids. And, I got into coaching because I always admired and appreciate the guys who coached me. Right? I was one of the guys who, the guidance, I grew without a father, right? And, my coaches or people kind of looked out for me. And I wanted to be a coach too, to do that same thing, to help sort of graft people. Which is one of the reasons why I kind of got into the type of work I've gotten into, public service and social services, because of that, making a difference somewhere, somehow. And
right on.
So coaching was my way that was giving back and sort of helping crafting and guiding guys. But high school is a little different because the kids are learning and they're looking for something. With women, most of them, families, they have jobs, college educated women, and
got to really want to play. For sure.
Exactly. So you can't teach them or coach them the same way you would a 16-year-old guy. Right. So, the intimidation factor, screaming, scaring the kid into doing something works for them, but not, you need a different approach. So that really helped find me. There was a moment years ago when I was coaching at Beechwood High School. I was just laying into a ref, and he never noticed me, didn't turn around, and slowly he backed up to me. I'll never forget this. Backed up to me, kind of looked over his shoulder and said, "Hey, coach, you're on my field," and turned around and went back to the game. And I said, what the hell am I doing? Why am I just, melting down and yelling? He doesn't care. It's not going to affect him. Am I helping the players become better by acting this way? So really did a course correction for me in terms of a coach. So, and even in terms of, it's the person in general. How do you look at life? You got to evaluate the situation. It's not a cookie cutter, one size fit all approach how you do things. So.
Speaking of that, did you catch the latest video of Marshawn Lynch coaching some youth football team, and he was being confronted by a kid's mother in the stands?
No.
Oh yeah, you might want to check that out.
Yeah, I think she was complaining that he was cursing or something, right?
Yeah. And I'm really interested to see what the difference of the approach to coaching is now compared to what it was, because, there was some harsh treatment even back in Byron that I heard about, like not being able to get water and, that type of thing. And then when the passing of, I forgot the ex-Ohio State, Minnesota Vikings guy that had a heart attack. Oh, Corey Stringer passed out on the field. And then they started having practices at night or when it cooled off and whatsoever. I'm wondering how that approach to coaching has changed in the high school ranks. I mean, it probably varies.
Yeah, big time. I mean, I coached at Beechwood in the early '90s, and I coached at Shaker 2 different times. But even then, things had changed. When I was a player in the '80s, you didn't take a water break. You were soft. If you wanted something to drink, you ran to kids till they dropped and that kind of thing. And you yelled at him, you grab the face mask. I remember, John Swartz, Coach Swartz grabbing the face mask. That kind of stuff. You not only do you get fired, you get sued. So you certainly can't do that anymore. But when I coached at Case Western Reserve, we built our practice, especially at 2-a-days, around the labs the players had. So we would practice at 6 o'clock in the morning.
And it's funny that you say 2-a-days. 2-a-days don't exist anymore.
It's a little different. So there used to be the old 2-a-days where it was you had a camp and then you had built into your 2 days, and it was consecutive. You sort of built it out and did your morning session, quick break, and afternoon session. That's how the old days were. And now it's a little formalized where there's coaching sessions, teaching sessions, there's walkthroughs. And so in Ohio, they apply different standards regarding the number of days you can hit, number of days you can be in pads. Mm-hmm. So a lot of that's affected how the 2-a-days are sort of structured. And then they allow more instruction during that 1 week pre-practice time frame. So there are ways that coaches kind of working through all that, but it's really the emphasis is less hitting and less contact and more emphasis on structure around coaching and teaching and technique.
So I don't want to get too deep into football because I know how people feel about me getting too deep into Little League Baseball because, that's my forte. But how about hitting? A lot of football players are saying, even pro football players, because of CTE and the number of hits people are taking, they're saying it's just a matter of time. So are there different approaches? I remember in Shaker, you couldn't play contact football until junior high.
Right.
And in a lot of states where my son grew up in Michigan, he was playing rocket football at 7 years old. So how do you feel about that and where that's concerned?
I think there's concern. I have 3 kids. My oldest, Michael, he played muni football and tackle football, and he played football through high school. There's obviously concern because kids are bigger now, they're faster now, they're stronger now. So, and football is a collision sport. When I played, you're right. I didn't, in 6th grade, you get to play flag, but you get your little Sears helmet and you can play flag.
Yeah.
When I finally played at Woodbury, 7th grade football, you were actually hitting it. It was like you weren't expecting this contact. And I'll never forget once in the huddle, I'm just like, hey, where do these stars come from? Because I got hit so hard. I was
You remember who hit you?
No clue. But I'd say it to the coach, and they're like, "Oh, shake it off, you'll be okay."
Yeah, shake it off. Exactly.
Yeah. Now that happens, a coach pulls you off. There's protocols you have to go through because there's that concern that does impact, no matter how severe or how often you get them. Any impact has some effect. So there's concern, but I do think that it's not football related only. All right, so soccer, volleyball. Lacrosse, which is a huge sport right now, rugby, all these other, even basketball. These are all contact sports that have some level of
collision.
Especially
soccer. Yeah, soccer.
Exactly.
Heavy collision.
Yeah, so the conversation should be sports in general, how to prepare the players to deal with more physicality, not just specifically focus on football being the only area of focus.
Rugby tackling. That's what people should learn. Rugby tackling.
Yeah. I mean, the reality is that a lot of the NFL tried to impose a different type of tackle format. They actually licensed coaches to teach this roll technique. And, we're conditioned to see those big bangs, man. We want to see those we want to see those things that take the helmet off. And that's what drives the fan base. And players got like that, too. They don't want to get hit like that, but they definitely want to hit someone like that. Right. And so you see less of a de-emphasis on the more safe, secure tackles. But NFL restricting those tackles below the knees. So now you got
especially that
down. Yeah. So they're trying to.
Some people say they'd rather take it in the head than the knees because the knees will take them out.
Yeah, and you can play with the concussion, can't play with the torn knee. So
right. Yeah, the days of Jack Tatum and Night Train Lane.
I used to check the book out of the Ludlow Library as often as I could. They called me the assassin.
Yeah.
And what George Atkinson did to Daryl Stingley was crazy. I mean, what they were able to get away with. Just looking at sports in those days, they get into fights, throw uppercuts, and then they would be playing. I was watching footage of Dr. J and Larry Bird, and they took a few swings at each other, and then they were playing the next play. So it's a whole different world, which is good. I think it's good.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Well, Paul,
Mhm.
so let's talk about Shaker. Shaker Heights High School. Watkins, you guys were wrestlers. What was your back then, if you remember, like what was your, I don't know, your plan after high school, as you were going through Shaker?
Yeah, I can honestly say that I did not have a plan after high school. I know that growing up that there was an expectation I would go to college.
Right.
And just to give some context to my family, as I mentioned, the older sister, younger brother, my mother, was raised us by herself, and she, when I was in elementary school, made a conscious decision that, supporting three kids, sending them to this wonderful school, getting them in the activities they need to get into, I can't do it the way she was doing it at the time. And she was working at, if you remember, Pick and Pay.
Yes.
Right next to McDonald's. Yeah.
Yeah, she used to work at a Pick and Pay in Mapletown Plaza. I'll never forget where it was. I used to take the bus out there, meet her sometimes. I would carry people's groceries to the cars for change. So she needed to change. She needed to make a difference. That's when she applied to the police department, and she worked her way up through the ranks. And so seeing her sacrifice and struggle and learn to try to build a life for her family was something that resonated but didn't impact me. All right. So, I'm a 17-year-old kid. Like, I know I'm going to go to college. I don't know what I'm going to do. And I figured, I'll figure something out down the way. I applied to colleges, got into Ohio State. My major was phys ed. I was going to be a phys ed teacher because I remember Quinones and Al Raymond.
Yes.
Those guys, that smells me. I looked up to those guys. They looked out for me. They helped guide me. I want to do the same thing. So that was my plan. Go to Ohio State, get a coach, and get a job as a gym teacher. And once I got to Ohio State, I realized that I had more fun than going to school. So, so my plan at that time was, just kind of day by day. And then at some point, the school and I had a hard conversation that maybe we need to do something else, Paul. And we came to a mutual agreement that maybe Ohio State's not for you, Paul. And I started in a different phase of life. At that point, I got married. The young woman I was been dating through high school. We get together in Columbus. We dated. We get married, and kids start coming along. And there's that phase in life that, hey, you're raising kids. What do you want to do? And then at that point, it became more, that information my mother bred it to me started to resonate, started to come up and bubble up. That start building that foundation, Paul, because I was in the same point my mother was. That, hey, raising kids and you're struggling, kind of getting by. You need to build for them, and that's when I went back to school, got my degree, and I started turning things into a phase 2 of Paul's life, where the focus now is making sure my family's taken care of, my 3 kids, who all, God bless, all college graduates living great lives, lay down a foundation for them to, to really benefit from something, and that's it. So, I was very fortunate in the sense that I had the opportunity for multiple phases.
So how did you decide what to pursue when you pursued your degree, and what was your degree in, and where did
so my first phase was phys ed, like I mentioned, and then when I redirected my life, teaching was still a key thing. I still want to teach, so I got my degree in history.
Okay.
And just so happened, life changes took me a different course. So after I got my degree, my first job was as the assistant recreation director for the city of Bedford Heights, and which is totally left field. I thought about coaching, thought about teaching, and I even had some outlays with the Shaker to come back to Shaker and teach. But the Bedford Heights job seemed to be so enticing. My oldest kid was in Bedford schools at the time. Our first house was in Bedford Heights, was in walking distance from my job. So, and once I got into that job, I saw how I can make an impact, and that's that point forward. Teaching wasn't my focus. My focus was making an impact in a different way. So, I just didn't do recreation programs. I really started building on social service programs. I started building, bringing in different aspects the city hadn't seen before, which I was very proud of. So,
and what motivated that? I'm sorry to cut you off, but what motivated? Were there things happening societally that made you direct your attention towards that? I've followed you on your Facebook page, and I'm starting to see what your posts are. So that's why I'm asking.
Okay. I would say that looking around, I saw a lot of faces who reminded me of my kids, right? And I saw a lot of faces that reminded me of young Paul. And these young kids were coming to my building. We have this wonderful recreation department here in Bedford Heights, and they lacked guidance. They lacked opportunity. They lacked someone to believe in them. Oftentimes, my job is spent just talking to kids, helping guide and direct them. So that's what led to that. So, an agency that just had basketball and baseball, we built it. So we had, one of the things I was most proud of was like the father-son 2-on-2 basketball tournament.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So, hey, dads, come in here, spend a day with your son, have fun. And that was something that we didn't do before. Introduce something called Tot Time, where parents could come in with their young kids with an instructor and do different activities. And after school sports club for these kids who had nowhere to go, who are a lot of latchkey kids, they can come in. They had a shirt, had ownership of a committee or a group or part of something, and we did activities together. Just did that, a studies group, those types of things. And a lot of that resonated because I saw myself and a lot of kids who were coming into the building. Single parents, kids who had nowhere to go, and it's not wrong to not have a plan, but it's difficult and it's hurtful when you don't have someone who can talk to you about a plan. And I wanted a person for that.
Yeah. Hey, going back to your mom, I mean, the fact that she made that decision to go into the Cleveland Police Force at that time when there were few women, and particularly also Black women, and the fact that she rose through the ranks to be the police chief.
Yeah.
How did that impact you? I mean, amazing. And how did that impact you growing up? I mean, in terms of like, your people in the neighborhood who knew you and everything, like, oh, your mom's a cop. I mean, did you get any like pushback about that?
Yeah, man, I could probably write a book about this. So yeah, there was a lot of things that impacted and affected us. The first and foremost was she was busy, So at that time, she was a patrol officer, and they worked what they call the swing shift. So everyone did a first shift, second shift, and a third shift. So there would legitimately be the 2 months in a row we wouldn't see her, because she worked. So that was the first impact. The second impact was just that the overall concern about her safety.
Yeah,
she was it. She was our like my grandparents, my maternal grandparents were in our life, were very part of our life. But my father wasn't. So it was just three of us. And she would go out, and there was a serious concern. We're like, she's gonna come home tonight. What's gonna happen to her if she gets hurt? So that was a piece there too. And there was a little bit, it was kind of weird because we grew up in an environment where we were kind of close knit. So we didn't really talk about so when those people who knew she was a cop, I would get occasionally, hey, don't talk to him. His mom's a cop. He's going to rat you out, that kind of stuff. So a lot of folks who did think that they were doing some shady stuff, they didn't want to be around me because they were afraid I would say things. So so there was that. And then the other piece is just dealing with life because, she would take the impact of her job. It's stressful to be a cop.
Yeah.
It's doubly stressful to be a female cop and extremely stressful to be a Black female cop.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So the things that she would have to deal with, I didn't become fully aware until I was much older, but seeing how she had to deal with those burdens and raise a family and address everyone's needs, it took time for me to understand the impact of that. And that's led me to become more socially active when I started to understand and realize that. As a 16, 15-year-old guy, you're trying to live your life and do your thing. But when you're 21, 22, and 23, and those lessons start to impact you, it became more resonant. And I saw a dynamic shift in my life as I became more professionally engaged and more community engaged, that there are pathways in a society where oftentimes people need to intersect and help course correct individuals. And we see that we can argue that if racism is going away, but it really isn't. Okay, we can argue that
camouflaged.
We're a better society now. Obama was a president, and these are things which when we have conversations, we have to be very honest about expectations and reality, and honest about reality. And these are lessons I learned from my mother, because how many of these guys told her, I'm not going to listen to a Black woman? A lot. Chief of police. And when Mike White appointed her, she took that job because she knew it was going to be tough, and she took that job because, one, she knew she deserved that job. So she took it. And so there are people who told her, don't take it because, you know, he's leaving office and you'll be demoted, which she was, you know, when the new mayor came in, that removed her from that position. But she put her stamp on it, and she did something that no one could say she couldn't do, and no one could take it away because she did do it. So
right.
So it's the effort, it's the opportunity and the challenge. You know, you've got to, when you're trying to step up, and that's a big thing.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Shout out to Mama Bounds. Yes, trailblazer. Yeah. Did she ever, she ever threaten y'all like, yo, I'll lock you up and take you down the county?
She did take us to the departments when she worked in the precinct. She worked on the west side, and occasionally do walk around, put us in the cage, do this stuff. And when my kids were of age, especially my two middle kids, my oldest and my middle kid, she would take them around, and she took them to a lot of events, and she let them ride in squad cars. And my mother was really, 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 really present in my kids' life. She was an amazing grandmother, and those guys got the
right
same
on
too. And look at my kids. My kids are doing wonderful stuff. My oldest is doing his thing. He's a manager in the liquor department with Giant Eagle. My middle kid, I'm wearing his hat, supporting him right here. He's a college professor at Foreman College, where he's teaching mathematics.
Wow!
Right on.
Yeah, my daughter is a supervisor in the library system at Harvard College. And that's because of you. The people who were part of my life. My wife, who's amazing. She helped produce kids. She's, like I said, we've been together since Shaker Day. So everything comes together, and everything has an opportunity. So you want to take those opportunities, you want to kind of strive on it, and then you can sit back and seeing the growth and benefit of that. So a lot of this is really because I had the benefit of going to Shaker schools, because a lot of the skill sets I learned, learning how to talk to people, understanding that people are different. These are tricks a lot of folks don't ever learn. And going to school with kids who have very economic backgrounds, going to school with kids who have very religious backgrounds. That's something that in my professional life helped push me, propel me, because there's nothing that I'm unprepared for because of that.
Right on. Yeah.
As I remember you back in, as you brought it up, we're in Mr. Hoffman's art class. I remember you always wearing your wrestling hoodie. You had glasses, you had braces, always smiling, but I never would have imagined this outwardly forward person today. You seemed a little I was really shy, but you seemed like equally as shy as me. Would you describe yourself as that person back then?
Yes, extremely shy. And people remember sports stuff, and I played sports because I didn't want to go home. That was it. That was it. I dealt with wrestling practice because it was better to be, on the mat getting beat up on than it was to be home alone. It was better to be on the football field getting beat up on than going home. So I did all that stuff. So that was my identity, because that's all I had at that time. And I'm still I'm an introvert. So when I do public engagement, when I talk to people, it takes a lot of effort for me to do this. I recently had to do a presentation about for my job on a new project we're doing. And it takes a lot out of me because I am an introvert. I'm relatively shy. The people in my circle, hey man, I embrace them. I love them, full of energy. And my kids will tell you that, hey, I'm the life of the party when I'm around them. My grandkid, I love them to death. But it's difficult for me to meet new people. It's hard for me to really open up because, again, my whole thing was that, we kept a very close knit family growing up, and that's something I've never really broke that shell. I know professionally I had to adapt these skill sets to become more
right.
So these are things I do, but it is not easy for me because I'm a natural introvert.
Yeah. So from the artistic point of view, we were talking pre-show about your love of comic books, and I see a lot of postings of you in comic book attire, if you will. Do you still draw? Do you still collect comic books? Like how is that in your life these days?
I don't draw as often. I find that my days when I have free time, I'm usually sleeping on my chair because I don't have a lot of free time. But I still collect. I don't draw as much. I every now and then I'll doodle something, but not as much. I had big aspirations of doing comic books, and I sent away art samples to comic book companies, Marvel, DC, years ago, and nothing really got work to that, so I'll take different directions. But I still collect. As I was telling you and Gabe earlier, I have about 85,000 comic books laying around here somewhere. I just keep collecting. I keep picking them up. I have a serious addiction. I love comics. I can't get out of them. I go to shows a couple of times a year. I collect antique action figures. I collect comic related stuff. I'm really into it big time. Yeah.
We won't tell you the address of where you live, but what's your most coveted, most valuable comic that you own in your collection?
I think the most valuable one I have is the #3 issue of the Avengers, the original series.
Wow.
Yeah, and I got that free at a garage sale, believe it or not. Yeah.
Oh man, there's still to be things to be found at garage sales. You never know.
Garage sales. Yep.
Marvel, are you a Marvel or DC person, or are you in the middle?
Probably say Marvel, man. Marvel all the way. So
yeah.
I'm in my office now, and I have Marvel memorabilia laying around here now. I have a box of comic books right behind me here. I picked up at a sale somewhere for a couple of bucks. So, I dabble in the DC. Obviously, a lot of the main guys, Batman, Superman, stuff like that, and a lot of collectibles. The Superman collectibles are, especially the original ones, are extremely rare and very valuable. So I do, do a lot of collecting for that type of stuff. So many old desk, items you can get. Superman related stuff in the 40s and 50s, but in terms of comics, I'm pretty much a Marvel guy all the way. A lot of independent books I get into as well, and dynamic. Dynamic Comics has a couple of new series. There's always something new coming up, but I'm mainly a Marvel guy.
Do you have this? Go ahead.
Do you have that one Iron Man issue? Tony's like looking in the bathroom mirror, and he's all effed up. I forget the name of that title, but it was like it was like an iconic cover.
Yes, it's called The Demon in the Bottle.
That's it.
Yeah, buddy. Yeah. I have that when he faces his alcoholism. So the comics have done a lot of things for me. It was a resource to go. Go to hide. Take comics to school and read them. It was a fancy place to kind of get into and love that. But there's an economic thing. There was a period of time where we were really struggling, and I sold some comics because we need to pay bills. So that it's always been there for me as a resource. I know my kids have joked about, hey, who's gonna get my comics and collectibles when I'm gone, and who's in what wheel and who has what. So it's a resource. The value tends to go up based on your emotional value, but also based on overall value availability. So I tend to collect in a couple of different formats. One, what I like to read, and two, where it's something of a moment of interest, so like an introduction of a new character, like the books where you saw the first Deadpool. Those books value increase all the time because the severity of the books kind of goes. Introduction of Harley Quinn, that first book, because she was never an original comic book character. She was originally a cartoon character who they introduced in the comics later.
Oh, okay.
So those things are, you collect for those unique pieces as opposed to, hoping that something's going to become valuable because you personally like it. So
I'm going to name drop. Are you familiar with Brian Azzarello?
That name sounds really, really, really familiar, and I can't tell you why.
He's a comic book writer. He wrote for Wonder Woman. He wrote the Joker, The Killing Joke.
Oh, okay. Yes.
And he and his wife teamed up. I went to Cleveland Stovart with him.
Oh, really? Good night.
Yeah.
When they released the Killing Joke movie, the animated movie, I won free tickets to go see it. And I still have that book. I think that's a great storyline. It's kind of unique. They did a different spin recently called The Three Jokers, where the belief is that there's been multiple Jokers throughout the course of the Batman continuum. There was one who was a criminal. There was one who was a clown. There's one who was a comedian. And so there was not just one Joker. There's a multiple ones who were working together and creating new Jokers to have different personalities to combat Batman. So, but there's like a couple of standards in my life, man. It's been heavy metal and it's been comics.
Let's get to the heavy metal part and how Shaker influenced you in your musical taste, because I know it had to have.
Yeah, I tell you, growing up as a young guy, we were an R&B family. We listened to R&B, Grover Washington Jr., Smokey Robinson. That was it. And it wasn't until I started, meeting new people and hearing things from different people that I started to realize, hey, there's a lot of different music out there. And people always tend to ask me, why did you get into heavy metal? Was it something? And I'll never forget. There was two things that kind of pushed me over. One day I was in my room watching television, and there was a commercial for a Kiss concert. And they're on stage, fire going up, explosions. And I was like, oh, what is that?
Yeah.
So that caught my attention. And then it was Halloween night. They used to do a radio show like Dr. Demento used to play. And he played the song The Trooper by Iron Maiden. And that was it. I was hooked, And so Me and one of my buddies in high school, Tom Watts. Tom, if you're out there, buddy, love you, Mad Dog Tommy. We would hit the Variety Theater Friday nights. I would win tickets from the WJCU, the John Carroll radio station.
Yeah.
Hit show after show after show, and I just cannot get enough metal. And to this day, I'm at work, depending on my project is, if I have a lot of writing to do, I'm hitting metal. I've got my radio on my phone. I'm just jamming away, and metal into my veins, man. Just like I can't get enough of it.
So, who are your favorite metal acts, and did you see them back in the day, and do you continue to follow them? Do you go see them when they come to town? Yeah, I don't go to concerts too often because I tell you what, in the old days when we go to Variety, they were theater seating, and it was stand up. I was a young guy. I'm an old dude, Eric. I'm not standing up for 2 hours. Well, the other people are old too, so they're sitting down as well. So you don't have to worry.
Yeah. But, growing up, one of my favorite bands was AC/DC, and I still love AC/DC now. I saw them a couple of times in concert. Always put on a good show. Metallica, I saw Metallica before when they were, young and drunk. I saw them on the Kill 'Em All tour. I saw them on the Ride the Lightning tour, and just amazing to see people my age out there doing something awesome. So I haven't seen a lot of concerts recently because it's just something I can't do. And then for some odd reason, a lot of bands, larger bands like Judas Priest, whatever, they don't come to Cleveland. They tend to go to Youngstown. Yeah. And it's just something about driving to Youngstown on a Thursday to see a concert.
It's just a lot. Do you collect the McFarlane figures? Because there's lots of. I just saw. Who was the original lead singer of AC/DC?
Bon Scott.
There's Bon Scott dolls. There's Alice Cooper's
I don't collect McFarlane because for figures, there's a couple things when I collect. I collect figures for characters I like. So a lot of Batman, Iron Man, Captain America, Hulk, Spider-Man, and Wolverine. So those are what I personally collect. And if there's something unique, I may find that I do a lot of resale. I have a small little booth at a antique flea market on the southeast side that I sell things that I repurpose. So if there's something I find unique, and then there's the vintage stuff that I find. So if it's like a 1950s Batman or Spider-Man memorabilia, I'll pick that stuff up. But so I don't get too much into the McFarlane things, so they tend to be a lot. Although they're really well made, but they're usually things that I'm a person collect.
Okay. This is turning into the Blurred show. You know that, right?
Yes. The story of my life, man.
Proto-Blurreds, man. Proto-Blureds.
But to get off the heavy metal thing, we can end that. But I'll say the one thing I'm most proud of with heavy metal is in 1984, Motorhead was in town, and I think it was on the No Remorse album. They played at the Variety, and I was there, and that was one of the loudest concerts recorded at the time. It was so loud. Plaster was falling off the wall, and the technician had to run and unplug the amps because Motorhead would not turn it down. And they finished the set with no sound and just playing and finished the set.
Wow.
Yeah, I couldn't hear for 2 or 3 days after that. Yeah.
I gotta ask you,
tinnitus.
What is this thing with Lemmy and all the Nazi paraphernalia? You got break that down for me.
Yeah, Lemmy just. And I don't want to speak for him, right? Lemmy, I think, was a subpar bass player who was in a band that at times probably got more credit for being innovative than it really were. I'm a fan of Motorhead, but I'm not one of these Motorhead diehards. I think that he felt that that type of black attire, that type of badass stuff, gave off I'm a tough guy kind of mentality. I don't believe he aspired to any type of racial purity perspective. I have no clue. It could be the case. I'm not a huge fan, but I've seen a few documentaries on him that really did not lean towards that perspective. So I don't know. I know that as a young guy going to concerts, that always worried me. I'm one of the black guys. Me and Tom.
Tom's
a Jewish guy. I'm a black guy. Here we are on the west side of Cleveland, going out there, doing whatever, getting prepped for the concert. That was always in the back of my mind. And I think that was one of the things that took some time to get out of with Shaker, that level of naivete, because we all were part of this soup and we all got along and everything was okay. We didn't see a lot of racial strife, although there may have been some, didn't really see it. So being introduced to it outside of that bubble was traumatic, So there's always that piece of, hey, what's going to happen? But I never felt any issues when I went to the concerts. I didn't really start seeing true racism until I got to Ohio State. And that was eye-awakening,
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, so you didn't have to body slam nobody at any of those concerts, like in the mosh pit or anything like that?
No. but I was known to throw a few bodies at Ohio State. So I was known to, you know, that was that guy. You know, there's a fight in the bar. I was probably there. So
yeah, right. I feel you. Man. Man, this has been so encompassing because you've covered a lot for us.
Who is your
Yeah.
hero? Who is your hero besides your
Yeah.
mom? This is I think this. Who did you
That's a
look
good
up
one.
to? Who are you strongly inspired by?
wow, you know, that's a tough question, and I don't have a good answer for you. I mean, my mother is probably someone I would say right away because there are a lot of things that people told me that, hey, Paul, getting married. I remember I was student teaching, and my teaching advisor like, you're an idiot. You shouldn't get married. So everyone told me getting married young was the dumb thing. Having kids young was a dumb thing. And by the
How
way,
old were you?
I got married at 20.
Okay, yeah, that is.
Oh
young.
wow. Okay.
Yeah, married to this day, man. Still married to this day. Same
Okay.
person. Yeah.
Congrats.
Having kids young was stupid. Don't do it. And I did all these things, and it probably was stupid. I was probably a dumb guy, but I did it anyway. And I did it because I wanted to, and I stayed dedicated to it because I wanted to. And I think the most important thing I learned from my mother, not besides the dedication piece and forging your own, forging ahead thing, she told me was be committed to what you're going to do. And that was as an important thing. And I can honestly say that, you know, having kids and getting married is probably one of the things that put me on a right trajectory to get where I'm at today. You know, being drunk in bars at Ohio State is not really a recipe for success. It really isn't. So, but having focus and having people who believe in you and people who are there where you need, that makes a difference. And then having something to want to strive for. So my mother definitely, you know, my wife too, you know, she's someone who worked hard, who was always there for me when I was coaching games, and she was at home with the kids, and she was mad because I wasn't there. She's, you know, hey, refocused me. So she's someone I would say is very, someone I look as a lightning rod and someone of inspiration. And then, you know, my kids, I don't want to be the guy who's overly sympathetic and overly, you know, mushy, but my kids are something that inspire me every day. You know, when I look at them, you know, whether it's Michael, my oldest, Jordan, my middle kid, or Avery, my daughter, my youngest one, the things these three people have done, you know, they, like I said, they all graduated college, they graduated high school with honors, two have advanced degrees, you know, like I said, Jordan's a PhD. So these guys really, they inspired me to become a better person.
Nice.
Right on. Yeah. You ever have those moments like you and your wife, you look at your kids and you're like, wow, we made them. We made this, you know? Yeah, all
the time. I mean, like I have a grandkid, he's just turned 3, and I look at him running around, and we go to visit him a couple times a year, and they come up here a couple times a year, and it's like, wow. One, like I talk to other people now. My boss at work, our director at Job and Family Services, he was telling me I was taking his son to college. I'm like, I'm seeing my grandkids. So I was like, we're on different planes, you know, we're around the same age, but different planes. There's definitely a lot of that, but I'll tell you what, I'm living a pretty good life. I got a house full of love. You know, I got comic books all over the place. Talking to old friends from high school, reminiscing about good stuff. So I don't have a lot of complaints, man. I'm doing a job that I love. I'm having an impact on people and making a difference. And I'm introducing programs, funding programs that are changing people's lives. So I can't really complain. I'm really happy with where things are in my life.
So being the public servant and being superhero type of person, one way or another, have you ever had any aspirations of running for a public office or anything like that?
So I'm a city council person, and I did not anticipate becoming a city council person. Right? So I had long envisioned that I would be a public employee till I retire. I retire and open up a comic book store and then live my life, right? And the position I'm in now with city council opened up late last year. So we had a recent election, and we have 4 ward seats in the city and plus 3 positions which are titled at large. I'm an at large council person. Our most recent election, one of our at-large representatives ran for mayor, and he ran unopposed, and he was elected, and his seat was open, which is the seat I'm in now. And so what council opened applications for interested parties. They held a series of interviews with people, and I was lucky enough to be selected. And when the opportunity arose, I said to myself, Paul, there are things as a person you can do that can make a difference in life. And sitting at home and complaining isn't one of them. So step up and do this and take this opportunity. And the worst thing they could do is say, no, thank you, try again. So I interviewed, I know a few of the people on the council, current council. So yeah, I went through it. I put my, application in, submitted my resume. I did the interview with all the council members, and they gratefully, they felt that what I had to say was important enough, and they gave me an opportunity. So, I've been on since January. I chair our community life committee. I'm also on a couple of the committees. One's the legislative committee, and one is the other public planning. And I try to bring a different perspective. No one in our current council has sort of the operational background I have. I was a director here at the city for a number of years. Plus, I work with legislators now in my day job. Whether it's city council, county council, federal offices. So I understand the role of the legislators, and I understand that the role of a city council person varies based on who you're talking to. So being flexible and trying to address their needs is the most important thing, but ultimately trying to put things in place to make people's lives easier and better. So that's how I've tried to kind of focus my approach in being a council person, one being readily available for customers for residents, but also, putting together ideas and strategies that are 3 or 4 or 5 years down the line, forward thinking and planning. So that's where I've been sort of laying the foundations. And I'm just now thinking about running for re-election. I won't have to run for another year, but I do see this is something I've enjoyed doing. The council president and the mayor seem to be, pretty good advocates and supportive of the things I've done thus far. So I'm very happy about that. I didn't foresee myself ever I ran for city council many, many years ago, and I lost. Okay. I kind of put it to the back of the side, but I've always become more and more politically active. Especially since the moment of Trump, even before that, the George Bush administration. How did these things happen? And people just sort of subjectively sit back and say, "Oh well, we have no voice." And we have to remember that just because you cast a vote and you don't get what you want doesn't mean the party's over. Right. So it has to be done, and we have to continue to push the envelope, ask for better work, ask for better service, ask for better representation. Because if you don't keep doing that in the current environment we live in, you're going to lose your voice, And so that's something I see as extremely concerning as a resident, especially a man of color, who has biracial kids, who has a biracial grandkid. These are things that I find fundamentally important, and I refuse to sort of sit back and say, wait for someone else to address these things for me. So I felt this is the best thing I can do in terms of making an impact in my city.
I just think that a lot of the people at large, the public at large, doesn't really understand civics and how it works. People get excited because it's a beauty contest, talent contest, popularity contest every 4 years. But they forget that the tools that are really needed are in the midterm elections. And what I'm happy to see is I'm seeing a lot of people of color addressing those things, and especially the leadership of the rappers that are coming out and stating, I'm not following this person because of this and that, and stating exactly what's critically at stake if this doesn't happen, if people don't pay attention and understand what is going on.
Absolutely. I think the biggest mistake we all encountered in 2016, one mistake is that we didn't take this clown serious, and everybody climbing down Trump. And we assumed everyone was going to see his faults as we did. And people didn't, because we all value things differently. And so the other thing I remind people is that when it comes to residents and constituents, most of us are concerned from the end of our driveway to our bedrooms. And that's pretty much it. So anything else that's going around us, our neighbors' problems aren't there. So we have to adjust our messaging, in this current environment, to not demonize someone, not criticize or, just attack them for having a different view. Understand where their point of perspective is, and then start to lay the foundation to understand how these decisions they make in terms of who they elect will impact their life. When I speak to Black men nowadays who say, well, I can't vote for a woman. And that's your personal preference. But let me ask you this. Have you ever heard of stop and frisk? And they all do. I've heard of that. How many times have you been harassed by the police? Oh, man, the police get me all the time. Well, do you know that these current administrative folks in the Republican Party want to institute a national stop and frisk thing? They want to give total immunity to cops. So here you are, because you think that a woman is more problematic than being hit over the head and put in jail and losing your sustainability and maybe even your life. Value that. And so when you start to have those different perspectives, that discussion regarding different narratives and different perspectives, it changes the focus. So it's no longer that why I don't want to vote for women, it's why they need to sustain my life. And this is a better way to address that conversation. So that's a lesson learned from 2016, is how to approach that conversation, not from I'm going to lecture you to tell you why you're stupid, but I'm going to have a discussion regarding what do you value and what you could lose if you don't do certain things. So.
Well, there's one big point. Our founding fathers did not have minorities and immigrants and women in mind when they were writing these laws, and it took amendments. And what's happening now is these amendments are being reversed, and the party that's at large is basically trying to take away these amendments, these amendments that became laws, including the voting law, which allows Black people to vote. And here's a staggering factoid that I just learned and just realized. Not up until 1973 were women able to get credit or loans without men.
Yeah.
They couldn't get a credit card. So, but those things are so pushed aside or swept under the rug for this celebrity contest. I was watching the not the DNC, the Democratic whatever we call it, when they swore in Kamala.
The DNC. Yeah.
The DNC. Yeah. There's all these slogans, and we're playing to different parties and what have you, and we lose track of what we're actually really fighting for, and what it just blows my mind. It's become Idiocracy, if you're familiar with that Mike Judd movie.
Yes. Love that movie.
Yeah.
Dax Shepard's best work. Yeah, and I think from the national perspective, their belief is that we need to right the ship and we need to be in control, and then we can worry about the next step. And it's almost difficult for us to chew gum and walk at the same time. We have to do one or the other. And I think as a society, because we have so many competing items, there's reality TV, there's our jobs, there's what we want to do next. So and we have a short attention spans too. So to get someone to move towards anything of value on the large perspective, that's always a positive. So I think to get people to really start filtering down, looking at local elections, because we see what happened in local school boards. These school boards are taking over and throwing books out, banning books. When the heck did we ever think we would talk about banning books in 2024? But it's a reality. And because for whatever reason they said the right keywords, DEI or critical race theory, and people based on misinformation or unwilling to be informed, draw these conclusions which are impactful on everyone. And I think the part of the problem is that we don't look at it as a greater issue. We look at it as segregated issues. Talking about voting rights laws, that's not impactful for just minorities, it's impactful for everybody. And if people understand that we all have a value in this, we all have a role in this, we all have a skin in this game, that's where we become splintered and segregated, and we're all yelling constantly simultaneously to get our voice heard, and we're in competition against other things, and it becomes very problematic to break out because we're all yelling instead of unifying behind some common approach or common cause.
Also, too, I would also say that if you're talking about from a party perspective, the Democrats have been playing catch up in terms of brand messaging. Okay. It's taken them a long time to figure out how to package and brand, because the Red Party has been doing that since the 70s, Lee Atwater and Reagan and all that. I mean, they laid the blueprint for Project 2025 back then. They just didn't call it that, but they've been consistent with the branding. And I think that's, to your point, Paul, earlier in this conversation about short attention spans and everything. That's how you have to package stuff now. You have to package it in bites, and it has to be repetitive, because I feel to a large extent our society has become low information. I mean, the educational system, you think about when we all went through Shaker and then out into the real world, sometimes it was a shock of how far you may have been advanced in terms of your critical thinking and reading and everything else.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to like fight to have a decent school system, and so anyway, I just think, yeah, it's a multi-pronged hydra head driven by fear.
Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. And the Democratic Party has looked at, we're a unified group of individuals working towards a commonality. Or, since the Southern strategy of the Republican Party, their expectation was that we're going to devise a strategy to get what we want. So there's a different approach here. One is that we're working together for a common good, even though we're not necessarily sure what those common goods are. Or the Southern strategy is that we're going to slowly take over the court, slowly take over the schools, and slowly do these things, because our agenda is very narrow and it's to do these things. And so that's those approaches. When, if you look at it from like a sports mentality, I want to put the ball in the hole. I want to score.
Yeah.
That's a Republican vision. Good, bad, right, or wrong. The Democratic approach is that, hey, we want everyone to touch the ball. We want everyone to have input on this play. And if we don't score, we all did a good job.
You need Marshawn Lynch at the 1 yard line. Okay. That's what you need.
Yeah.
So
there's a possibility with the way the courts are set up that Supreme Court all the way down, even if Trump loses, he can still
it's amazing
obtain the presidency.
Yeah, it's amazing we have to fear all of these potential outcomes because we've allowed this to happen, because where we vote, Cuyahoga County, they've done, like the Women's League of Women's Voter has done this type of analysis. If you run for a judgeship in Cuyahoga County, if your last name is Kelly or your last name is Russo, you're more likely to get elected. And I've known personally of an individual whose last name was Nats, Russo, but changed it to Russo, and she got elected. So these are things that, for whatever reason, it becomes baked into our mindset, and it keeps bleeding out these outcomes. We're confused why. Because when we try to share information, it competes against these other things, and there's no reason why. And we can argue why, but when we talk about sharing information and being clear on outcomes and how it impacts your life, how a person digests that information becomes confusing for some of us. And I think that's where we need to try to figure out exactly why there's confusion with that information, and why it's being digested, and why they're confusing when they're digesting that information. So.
Well, also too, you think about our state of Ohio, right? If we go down 71, Cleveland, Columbus, Dayton, Cincinnati, bluish, purplish, everywhere else is red. And so when you go on to the state house, you're up against red in terms of, trying to get legislation passed, and who's in the pockets of others and stuff like that. Especially that First Energy debacle, like people needed to be prison terms for that stuff. But
I agree. But that's to my point where I spoke about Cleveland City Council, or Bedford Heights City Council is having someone who wants to have an impact and get the input from the residents to what makes and legislative things that will help them out, and look at, because the role of a legislator is not to. We don't manage programs. We don't manage departments. I think there's a very distinct difference. So there's a judicial branch, an executive branch, and legislative branch. We all work independently. We're supposed to. We should coordinate on outcomes and coordinate on resources, but we all are designed to have checks and balances on one another. So as a city council individual, my job is to look at legislative ways to address problems to help the city grow and help everyone benefit. And so I think sometimes helping residents understand that I have a backup plumbing problem. As a council person, I can't fix that for you, but I can help move you to the point where we get that resolved. As a council person, my job is, what can I do legislatively to make sure that doesn't happen again? Can we put more money into a service department to make sure we do regular annual checkups on plumbing to make sure this doesn't happen again? So, and sometimes those things don't work that way. Sometimes what happens is that a resident has a problem, someone says, well, fix it, and no one fix it, or it gets fixed, but never gets turned into how do we resolve it from happening again? And that's where we find ourselves locally, countywide, statewide, and federally. We're looking at, again, subsets or pockets of we're trying to achieve these victories instead of looking at the greater good and how to maintain that over a period of time.
I feel, Paul, you need to invest in a good golf cart or gator, and have you a couple of yellow legal pads, and just be driving around the community, stopping, talking to folks, hitting the barbershops, hitting the beauty salons,
Hey man,
Writing it down.
I get out and I try to get out and walk around when I can. And we have once a month here in Bedford Heights, we have a community engagement meeting where our residents can come out. We can talk about different things, introduce information about the city. I do have a Paul Bounce, City Council Paul Bounce Facebook page where I promote a lot of information regarding services and resources. So I try to do what I can. The downside for me is that it's really on the weekends I can do this. If I after work, I hit the streets. Folks are living their life. I don't want to interrupt you. On the weekends, that's what I can. So I can't touch as many people as I want to, but that's an ongoing thing. So,
hey man, you have a barbecue or fish fry or some food.
Hey, if you're gonna coordinate that for me, Gabe, let's make it happen, bro.
Hey, Gabe wants to run for Shaker Heights mayor, so maybe you can help him with that. He's on his way back.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So yeah, we can talk about that. For sure.
Hey, let me ask you this: since you've been engaged in it brought to mind like 2016 as being a pivotal time. I was out helping with the Obama campaign. That was 2008, but 2016, when the Cavs finally won a championship, and I was half asleep, and then when they won, it still hasn't hit me that they won, and realizing that it didn't change my life, and secondly, I'm not as big of a sports fan after that, and especially with all the stuff that's happened politically. Do you have a similar experience with that, or are you still a diehard sports fan as you used to be?
I am a huge sports fan. I love sports, but I'm equally with you with the 2016 one. I thought it was amazing. I don't own the team, so I have bragging rights, but why is that important to me to brag that these guys got a championship? So I'm super happy. I'm a Cavs fan through and through. I'm a Guardians fan. I am a Browns fan.
Did you cry? I mean, I saw people crying. I could understand it, but I was thinking, man, the way this country's going, that's when I'm crying, or that's when my real crying will happen after these elections.
I have a video where I cried, and I put it on Facebook. I was out in Oakland. I was out in Oakland during that championship run, and I cried tears of joy because Cleveland deserved it, and it was a long time coming, and there were a lot of other people who weren't around to witness that. So that was my cry. That was my cry. So was I thinking about the election and all that other stuff? No, I was just thinking about our city and deserving that thing. So I stand by my cry. I'm just saying.
No, that's fine. I just look at people that follow sports better. It's almost like a religion, Yeah,
no.
They know more about sports, Cowboys, and drafts.
I love sports. The Cavs won that championship. I was amazed. I watched the game. It was.
You couldn't script that. You couldn't script that.
Loved all that, but yeah, I mean,
I guess I shouldn't have fallen asleep. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying. I'm a fan. I love it. I'll watch to the day I die. Super happy to win a championship, but my life went on.
Yeah. Does it bother you? Like, for instance, Mahomes' wife sent a like on Trump's whatever he posts on, and now people are. I mean, does someone's political view bother you? Like, would Aaron Rodgers not be a favorite player based on his political view?
And I'll tell you why. And I mean, there are certain places I don't shop anymore. I mean, this has become a riff with extended family who are huge Trump supporters. I look at it very clearly. I mean, having a policy dispute with someone is a policy dispute. If you think the government should spend less money or more money, that's a policy discussion. Supporting a man who views me as not a person, who looks at me as someone who shouldn't have the same rights as him, who hangs out with Nazis and white supremacists, who only wants to allow an environment where other people are denigrated, treated with disrespect, and only a certain class of people should be able to excel. You support that. It's not something that I can overlook. It's different. If you want to support Romney, you want to support, whatever, that's fine. But those politicians, even McCain, when McCain started having issues with Palin and with the residents who were issuing these anti-negative, anti-Obama things, he kind of tried to shut that down.
Yeah, right.
Trump bleeds into that. He believes, and this has been validated more than enough. I don't need to sit here and sort of, expound on all these issues, but he doesn't look at people of color, minorities in general, women, gays, anyone that's not an older, rich, white guy, at least from the way he sees it, is a value. And anyone who ignores that stuff and says, Trump's still my man, I have a problem with you. Now, if you want to talk about policy, again, you want to talk about spending, that kind of thing, foreign policy, I'll have a debate with you because people are entitled to their opinion. But when it comes to that, that's where I draw the line. And I've advocated since 2016 that I'm living a Trump-free life. So people who I have found who are Trump lovers, I have a neighbor across the street. I've known this woman since she's moved into the neighborhood. We've invited her to my house. We've been to her house. She hung up Trump signs in her yard. She put a F Biden, and if you voted for Biden, F you sign in the yard. I stopped talking to her. I refused to talk to her because if her belief is that you support a man who looks at me as the enemy and looks at me as someone who's not as, who doesn't deserve the same rights as he does, that's a huge problem for me.
Yeah, well, I look at people like Tiger Woods, who we cheered our butts off for, and people like Tom Brady. I mean, they still are befriending black people, and they play with black players and superstars, and they still have a relationship, but there's still this connection with Donald Trump, and I just don't understand it.
Yeah, I mean, I get it because for them, they look at it. It's the old Ben Carson or what's that? Donald's who's the representative from Florida? Not Aaron Donald.
Oh, you're talking about Tim Scott.
Byron Donalds.
Okay.
Yeah, or even Tim Scott. Yeah, these guys feel that they're part of the group, part of the club, so they're protected from this. You know, they're part of they're wearing the MAGA hats. You know, they're friends with Trump. So you know, when the torch wielding Nazis come down the street, they'll skip their house. Mm-hmm. And as we've seen, this is played out in Somalia. We saw this played out in South Pacific, South Asia under Pol Pot. We saw this played out in Europe, in the Polish slums. Just because these people align with the enemy, they're not safe. It always happens when chickens do come home to roost for these individuals because all you're doing is hurting the people that you are aligned with by cozying up with basically, you know, the oppressor.
Yeah.
And, yeah. So they're doing it because it gives them the money they want, gives them access they feel that they deserve. But at the end of the day, we all know what happens. I mean, I was a registered Republican for a number of years. And I've said on the committee meetings where you hear the N-word drop pretty freely because that's how they feel they're able to do that. That still happens to this day. Byron Donald, Tim Scott, they hear this stuff too. And that's what is perplexing to me. Why do they value themselves so little that because they get invited to these events and they get Trump's handshake or pat on the back, that's enough to validate them? That's sad and concerning. But
it's shining.
I draw the line.
Shining.
Hey man, Trump.
So you were a registered Republican. When did that end? And
I can honestly say maybe 20. I mean, I voted for Obama, you know, both times. So before that, and then I sort of kept it because I purposely wanted to vote against any other Republican. Like I voted for Kasich, you know, in the first primary.
Yeah.
So I haven't officially changed my affiliation because I've been trying to be the spoiler. Like I purposely think I can do something by voting against these guys. But
rich, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. But I've pretty much been voting Democrat for a number of years now because, you know, again, these guys, it's no longer a policy thing. It's that, you know, their view of the world is what's important and they'll do what they can to make it happen on us and to us, regardless of what we want. And so that's not policy any longer. You know, that's not arguing whether defense spends too much money. It's arguing whether, you know, a gay couple is allowed to adopt a kid. That's not policy. That's human rights. And when you no longer are talking about human rights, you're talking about forcing your vision on us. That's where things become problematic.
Yeah, Handmaid's Tale, all that in that vibe. Yeah.
Mind your business, man. Stay out of our beds. Stay out of our room. Sort of thing. I don't understand why that needs to be addressed politically.
Well, think about it. I mean, for every right toward human rights, like we had to fight for civil rights. You had to fight for, you know, we still haven't passed the ERA amendment. We had to fight for women's rights. It's always been a resistance toward people trying to live their fully authentic lives. And it's, you know, so yeah, you know, it's a lot of this is, you know, ideology wrapped, camouflaged, you know, a certain
racism.
ideology. Yeah.
Well, racism is very expensive, as you see.
But they don't care. Folks don't care. They'll cut their nose to spite their face. They don't care. You know, that's the psychoticness of it. I mean, racism should be considered a public health issue.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's a psychosis. So, you know, it's
I mean, when racism addresses policy, clearly we see what happens. All right. I mean, one belief is that, you know, I'm in public service, you know, job and family services where, you know, we deal with Medicaid, child care, SNAP, whatever. And this notion of the welfare queen is still prevalent.
Yeah.
And so in Ohio, the average individual who receives public assistance, and just the SNAP in general, just look at food assistance, is a single white female between the ages of 26 and 38. And, you know, they have multiple children. Then the next category is an older female white Caucasian woman. So these are the two primary populations in Ohio who receive SNAP or food assistance. But we are again perpetuate this whole idea that the minority population are stealing these benefits, where facts and data tells you the contrary. And so, you know, when we live in a world where we doubt what information is being shared because, you know, it's fake news, it's really hard to have a legitimate conversation, because if people don't believe facts, what do you believe then? So.
Yeah.
Well, it's also the affirmative action. We were led to believe that unqualified people were given jobs they were not qualified for.
Right.
It wasn't that at all. It was that qualified people that were minority didn't get a chance to be considered for jobs.
Yes,
But,
you
they
know,
need to be incentivized to be able to do that.
but you know, it's an irony to that when you have certain, you know, folks, you know, making a big stink about affirmative action. It's like, well, who enacted the policy and the legislation? Who were those people? What did they look like?
Yeah.
So it's you know, it's like the thing. It's a disconnect. It's a total disconnect there. You know, we didn't. You know, it's like putting a Band-Aid on a shotgun wound. You know.
Absolutely.
So yeah. So you know, you can't stop evolution. You can't stop progress, and you're either gonna, you know.
Well, Gabe, if you don't believe in evolution, you can certainly stop it.
Yeah.
You know, if you visit that recreation
I
lab,
like that.
Yeah.
isn't there that museum in Southern Ohio
In
by
Cincinnati.
Yes.
Yeah.
Pictures
So,
of
you
Jesus
know.
holding a velociraptor. You know, I've seen those things.
And this should be in a comic book, but it's real life, guys, and that's the stuff.
Oh,
that's
Yeah,
hilarious.
it's unbelievable, and we want to laugh, but it's so detrimental. It's nothing to laugh at.
Yep,
You know, these things
absolutely.
are, and like he's always said, and it's out of the Mein Kampf handbook, if you will. If you continue to tell a lie over and over again, people will believe it, and that's
Yep.
all that happens. It's just
Mm-hmm.
it's just throwing a wrench in the works. Every time you want to have a serious conversation, something comes up about somebody's race or where they were not born or who they were sleeping with to get into office. It's all this like housewives of Beverly Hills stuff that America gravitates towards. As in sports, like who's the GOAT? I mean, how are we gonna? When are we gonna get rid of that? Who the fuck cares who the GOAT is? Who cares?
Hey, I mean,
While everything is being about to be taken away from us. Who the fuck cares who the NFL or NBA GOAT is?
I will say this, Eric. All right. I mean, I don't, and I know there's a whole cottage industry of radio talk show hosts and ESPN hosts who are trying to validate their paychecks for talking about this kind of thing. But we have to remember, some people's lives are so traumatic, are so difficult and so tough. They do need some level of escapism. So, you know, I'm in the factory all day, working 12-hour day. I'm getting beat down. I come home. I got problems in my house. You know, I got bills that are due. All I want to do is sit down, have a beer, and just talk, ask with my buddies about Jordan and LeBron. So there's some moments where we do need that level of escapism. I mean, we can't always live in a life that's full of, you know, high alert, high energy. You know, everything's going to end today. So we do need those moments of time down where we can say, today I'm going to take a breath and I'm going to worry more about what's on TV than what's happening outside, even though I know the world could end soon. So, and I think in some cases, we need to be able to understand people need to have that moment, need to have that without judgment, and understand that some people are going to gravitate towards helping us and some people are not going to because they're just not wired that way.
The problem is we carry our TV around in our pocket and we wear it on our wrists every day. So,
well, I agree with you, but it does play a lot of heavy metal for me, so I'm okay with that.
Hey, everybody cherry picks, man. Everybody cherry picks, and you got to see what that impacts you the most or impacts whatever, the other people the most, It's like
well, Dire Straits should be a heavy metal band. They should play heavy metal.
Oh, dude, we can have a podcast just on why you're wrong with that. Yeah, no.
Well, I'm just speaking poetically about that. Okay, just
I mean, like I can argue, we can argue about, should Deep Purple be considered heavy metal? Probably not.
Greatest heavy metal band: Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin.
Is that a question or a statement?
No, that's my statement. That's just my greatest heavy metal bands are.
Did you? I just watched Almost Famous last night, and I heard that the fictional band Clearwater was based on Led Zeppelin and Ozzy's group.
Wow.
Black Sabbath. It was based on Black Sabbath. So yeah.
Paul, I'll send you my short I did on Led Zeppelin about a decade ago.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll drop it, in the chat.
I'm that unusual guy that thinks that Sabbath was better with Ronnie James Dio, but that's just me. I'm sorry. Black Sabbath was better with Ronnie James Dio. Yeah, the Mob Rules. I think that's their best album. But again, that's just me.
Okay. Yeah.
Wow. So we usually we're at the 2 hour and 20-minute mark. You pretty much answered what Shaker has done with you, the skills that you took from Shaker. Yes, exactly. So here's another thing what we always ask our guests every single week if you've watched our show. Who would you recommend for the show? And by recommending that person, that individual, who could you help get on the show?
Okay, so there's a couple of unpack what you're asking me here. So help you get with, I don't know. I mean, a lot of folks, they hear a message from Paul Mounds like who? So I don't know about that. Right? So isn't that like the old days in the hallway? They'll see Paul walking down the hallway and say hi. So
you got clout, man. You got clout. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate
Go ahead. But who would it be?
But yeah, so I kind of thought this through in preparation for today because I didn't really do a lot of prep for today. Just tried to hydrate, so I'm able to talk here. But,
you killed it, bro. You killed it. Shout out to the 5 people watching. Please like and subscribe, whoever you are.
Like and subscribe. Get us over 100 this week. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Subscribers.
So there's a part of me that's really selfish that I want to know, like, hey, whatever happened to this guy? Like Bruce Gardner. Man, I love me some Bruce Gardner in high school. Like whatever happened to Bruce? He's not on social media. So they guys like that. But I think in terms of greater good of what you guys are doing here, I think someone like Eric Keene would be really, really, really amazing. Right? Eric has done some amazing stuff. His Facebook page is him and Obama. So there's got to be a story behind that worth hearing. So I think that's really awesome. And it's just so many people who come out of Shaker who are so amazing. So it would be a disservice to try to throw out names because it's someone I wouldn't really miss, but I think it's deserving. But on that note, I will say this: a couple weeks ago, you guys had Michael McElroy on. Michael, remember that?
Yeah.
Michael, I want to do a shout out to Michael. Man, I tell you, years ago, and I haven't talked to Michael in years. So my daughter, Avery, my youngest kid, is a theater girl. She loves theater. Her favorite performer is Sutton Foster. On a limb, I just reached out to Michael. Said, "Hey, man, my daughter's really into, in the Broadway. By chance, do you know the representation for Sutton Foster? I'd like to get some information and connect my daughter with her." This guy knew Sutton Foster. He reached out to her for me, got her to autograph picture, signed playbill, had it mailed to my daughter. Wow. So, yes. Michael, if you're listening, shout out to you. That moment made not just my daughter happy, it made me happy. It made me proud to be a Raider. And get my shirt here.
I see.
But
stay with your chest.
Just shows you what a great person Michael is, and some of the really good people that come out of Shaker Heights. So I wanted to say that before this podcast ended.
No, I appreciate that, man. And look, you knocked it out the park, man, in this podcast. And speaking of merch, you can go to the Shaker Garment Company at myshopify.com and see our line of Shaker-inspired merchandise. Shaker Raiders all day. So, for all the people who tuned in today to hear my man Paul Bounds speak, thank you so much. Like and subscribe. Most importantly, Paul Bounds, my man. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Yes.
Thank you.
So, next week, we have David Embry. David Embry will be in the house to talk about his Shaker journey and his path. Tune in next week or catch us on Spotify, Amazon Music, or the Podcast Index.
And now a word from our sponsors.
I have to show you my Knockbox. It's a system that comes with 15 labeled folders in 66 categories that organizes every single part of your life in case of an emergency or death. And it's not just the labeled folders. It also comes with detailed instructions so you know exactly what information you need to put in there and what your next of kin needs to do with it. Click on through to the website so you can check out the deals this holiday season.
All
There's
right.
a little taste of our merch there.
Until next week, signing off. Oh, I just missed the sign off button. Here we go.